And those are really the two options. Or they need to drastically raise taxes, which we are absolutely not going to do, which the state cannot afford, which is one of the things that dug us into the hole economically that we've been in for the last 10 years because we had too many taxes. I think this is the first time in more than a decade, certainly, that we've really moved in the right direction on that front. We created tax incentives to keep some businesses here. We created tax incentives to invest in small business. We got rid of the death tax, which I know everybody here is aware of because I've discussed it probably 2 or 3 times when I've been here, but I don't think you can overstate the importance of that issue. Only 17 states have that. And among those 17, which already made us an outlier, we had the lowest threshold in the country, which was killing small business, which was driving people out of Ohio, which was breaking up farms to the point where I had one of the trustees from this county go down to Columbus to testify, hey, our township's going to take a hit, but we still think you should get rid of this. Because we just can't afford it as regular people, because here's a half dozen people in my family or close friends who've had their farms broken up, who've had their small businesses threatened. So I think we're moving in the right direction, and we're not going to see tax increases, which leaves us with a few, frankly, unpleasant options, and one of them is going to be to look at some of the things that really save money here, requiring 15% payments for health insurance premiums of all state employees, and saying, you know what, this is a good idea, this is a popular idea, and this bill is going to have to get passed on its own. And I think that you will see some effort to look at the various things in the bill that can be separated out, that really save money, that really help government keep functioning, and you'll probably see some of those passed individually. And I think the Plain Dealer and the Dispatch and some of the other major media sources have sort of seen this too, and this is one of the reasons why over the summer they started talking about the need for compromise. I think they were hoping that we could sit down with the other side and say, listen, 15% health insurance has to happen. Pooling of benefits is good for your members and it saves you money. Why don't we do that too? And work on some of these things and get some of that in a compromise. And the Plain Dealer had some polling on their website where they broke out 6 or 7 of the issues, and I think 5 of them were popular by a margin of 60% or more. So a lot of these things might have to happen anyway, and honestly, I think a lot of the labor movement wouldn't be averse to a lot of those things happening. Or at least that's what they're telling me now. When they think they have the upper hand, we'll see if they still, act that way. But I think some of it is going to happen because we need to save the money because we don't have it anywhere else. Go ahead.
Are local school boards free to take a stand on an issue like SB5?
I think they can. I'm not sure how much they will. A lot of local officials. I'll tell you, the municipal league, to give you an example, they were very strongly behind this, and they still are. But I don't see very many of their members coming out and taking a stand because I think people are nervous that they put a giant target on their back politically. And that if you're a member of the school board and you say, well, I support issue 2, well, you're somebody that's going to get targeted by the OEA in the next election cycle. I mean, they're free to.
Make much money. I mean, they're there to represent the taxpayer.
I agree, and frankly, I wish more local officials came out in favor of it, because they're all quietly in favor of it. It'd be helpful if they were a little more noisy about that.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
This may be a silly question, you may have answered it, and I don't understand it.
Sure.
No. But on the ballot, on 2 and 3, is there any way of being honest? In like for issue 2, they reversed it?
No. Issue 2, if you want to keep SB5, you vote yes. And if you if you want to repeal it, you vote no.
Okay.
And the question is pretty straightforward. It's only 1 or 2 sentences, and it essentially says, would you like to keep the collective bargaining reforms passed in Senate Bill 5 by the legislature, signed by the governor? So it's pretty straightforward. What you're thinking about probably is that the repeal effort was sort of sneaky with what they did. They used petitions that said, do you want to repeal SB5? Or it was more complex than that, but that was the basic gist of it. So then when they came into the ballot board, the question should have been, vote yes to repeal SB5, vote no to keep it. right? Because the question that they passed around that people signed was, do you want to repeal? But then they said, well, you know, we'd really like it to be an affirmative vote to keep the statute, because we looked at the numbers and we see that people tend to vote no on everything. And they really do. It's a significant bump in the polling. Yes or no, the no side gets several points out of that automatically. And the more complex the question is, the more people tend to vote no. So they also wanted really complex ballot language, which thankfully we do not have. We have the straightforward sentence that says, do you want the statute or not?
Can you explain the example of the Columbus School District? I don't know if you're familiar with the numbers.
Sure.
But just to show how much we save if it passes. I found it pretty amazing. It was under 44 million or 144 million.
I'm not sure with Columbus, but I can give you examples from here. Highland local schools had a new contract negotiation this summer. They signed a new deal increasing the percentage that people would pay for health insurance. I can't remember if it was 15 or 17% that they ultimately arrived at, but whichever of the two numbers it was, it ended up saving about $900,000 a year. That translates next year into 20 to 30 people who don't have to lose their jobs when you're looking at staff, or frankly the junior level teachers who, under the last in first out system that we're trying to get rid of in Senate Bill 5, the younger people who get paid less would be the ones who will be gone automatically. So we're looking at about 30 jobs that were saved in Highland local schools the next time the budget rolls around for them. And in Medina, I think they did something very similar. I think that came out to more than $1 million. Several of the other school districts in the area have done that, and every one of them.
That was a one-year contract. That was only 1 year. I see them giving it up for 1 year, hoping that
because they're gaming the system.
Right.
And I think if the reforms in SB 5 stay in place, you will see people paying 15% for their health insurance premiums, and therefore the districts will be saving hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, and more people will be employed. And this is a message that Frank LaRose and I have tried to get across to people throughout the last year. This is not an anti-union measure. If you want teachers in the classroom, if you want police and firemen on the streets working, being able to support their families, you want maximum employment. And this bill leads to maximum employment. And the other alternative is telling the Highland local schools they have to come up with $900,000 somewhere else. And where else are they going to come up with that money? They're going to put an issue on the ballot to raise taxes again, which will lose, and then they will lay off 30 people. So this is the pro-teacher response, as far as I'm concerned. This is the one that keeps 30 extra people working and keeps smaller classrooms. They keep talking about wanting to negotiate the size of their classrooms. Well, here's an idea. Let's keep as many teachers employed as possible. Your classrooms will be smaller. Or we could lay off 30 of them, and you could take the students that were in those 30 classrooms and you could jam them into bigger classes. If what they really want is smaller classrooms that are easier to manage, let's keep your neighbor employed.
Maybe what we need to do is just let this thing fail and let people, you know, be careful of the free, be careful what you wish for. You know, let them find out what they buy. Let them find out that kids are in classes with 45 students.
No.
Let them be told.
sort of like electing Obama, destroying Americans.
I know, right. Maybe,
Well,
maybe the next time around they won't be quite so dull.
Right.
Well, I think at the end of the day, I want it to succeed for the same reason I voted for it, which is that I'm worried about the children getting the best education, and I'm worried about the 30 people at the bottom of the seniority ladder who are going to lose their jobs.
I hope it passes. I hope it passes. You know, but I'm looking at the voter out there that I've said before, it's absolutely certain that Abraham Lincoln was president during World War II. You know, I mean, these people are so uninformed. They're getting their information from
well, and that's part of the problem. It's that people are getting information from millions of dollars in ads that aren't telling the truth, frankly. And that's why we need to spend the next 5 weeks explaining to people. I guess it's 4 weeks now, so we need to get working an extra five days worth that I subtracted out there. I think that's why we need to spend the next 4 weeks telling people what's really in here and what's not. and explaining to them and telling teachers your salary is not going to be cut by 60% or 40% or whatever made up number you were told, and letting them know what the real alternatives were. Because I think if people look at the alternatives, everyone pays 15% for their health insurance, or we lay off 10,000 people, or we raise taxes. Senate Bill 5 is easily the best of those three options. And I think most people that understand what the options were, they get it. And we just need to make sure that as many people as possible on November 8th realize that. And if they don't, you know, November 9th comes around, we've still got a fiscal hole we've got to fill, and we'll get back to the drawing board and try to find another way to do it. But at the end of the day, whether they were misinformed or not, you know, public servants work hard for us, and they're our family and our friends, and we all need to come together and try to be one cohesive state again. And that's one of the reasons, frankly, that I wish we could have had a compromise, that I wish that union bosses in D.C. weren't running the show for the repeal effort, because I think a lot of the union members here would like to have a compromise. I think some of the union leaders here would like to have a compromise. They came to us. They went to John Kasich in June and said, we want to sit down, we want to try to hash this out. I think Bill Batchelder a month or two ago was here, and he mentioned this, that Joanne Davidson went and actually tried to reach a compromise with them, and we had at least something in principle that everybody sort of liked. And national union leaders from Washington, they didn't want that. And they put a stop to it, because they would rather roll the dice and spend $40 million here and try to repeal it than have a compromise, because a lot of other states face the same issue. And if we had a compromise here, they're worried that 15 or 20 other states might look at what we reached as a compromise and try to pass that too. So Ohio really is a battleground for things that have nothing to do with the things that are going on here. And that's why you see so much money being spent, I think, on the other side, because you have money coming in from outside of Ohio, and you have people who form a group, We Are Ohio, they have the group We Are Wisconsin. I think that that's the catchy thing that they're going to do everywhere. And they're not any of that. They're people from Washington who get paid to do this, who are trying to cause trouble, who won't let union members in Ohio decide for themselves what's best for them. So anyway, that's my 2 cents on it. I think it's important that we get people educated as much as possible. And I think if people understand what's really in the bill, it's relatively modest. And you look at some of the things we did in the budget earlier this year, I think everybody, when I was doing town halls about SB 5, said, well, why are you targeting us? Why are you trying to balance the budgets on our backs? I said $1.3 billion, I didn't say 8. We balanced the budget in a lot of different places. Like I said, I tried to balance it in part by cutting my own pay. You know, we cut local government funding. We had a significant amount of money from the federal government last time that wasn't here this time that we couldn't disperse. There were a lot of difficult choices that had to be made, and it's not just about collective bargaining. It's not just about public employees. This is a piece of a much larger puzzle, but it's an important piece. And I think one way or another, issue 2 has to survive in November, because if it doesn't, it sends a message loud and clear across the country that Ohio is a place you don't want to do business. And even though SB 5 doesn't necessarily relate directly to any of these businesses, it still sends the message. And the message might be, frankly, more important than the specific provisions themselves. Because Ohio is moving in the right direction. We've had significant job growth in the last 9 months. I think according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, we're up to around 79,000 new jobs in the private sector since January 1st. We still have a lower unemployment rate than the national average. And I mentioned that the last time I was here, we hadn't seen that in 10 years for a single month. And every single month since John Kasich became governor, we've had a lower unemployment rate than the rest of the country as a whole. So we're moving in the right direction while the rest of the country isn't. And I think we want to stay on that path. We don't want to do anything that slows us down. Go ahead, Jamie.
I'm just thinking every single thing you just said is a big old lie. Was in the response from the teacher that I talked to about, no, it's fake, it's false, that isn't in the salary schedule for income teachers. All of this stuff comes from Innovation Ohio, this progressive think tank, she said. She lists every single one of these. How come we can't, like, get superintendents to blast their own email list with what's true?
I think for the same reason we have school boards that privately tell us they like the bill but don't want to take a public stand about it. because that superintendent has to work with the teachers, and
Well, how do
I
we,
think some
how do you
superintendents
keep up?
have.
Is anybody at the state level trying to engage, kind of, all the superintendents, all the school board presidents, and trying to get some kind of unified response? If locally people support these things, right, anybody trying to get them all to make a stand together? It's easier to stand up that way sometimes.
I'm not involved in building a better Ohio on a day-to-day basis, so I'm not exactly sure what they've done, but I think that we've contacted almost every local official in the state to see if they were willing to participate or what their views were. So, go ahead.
I don't know about the rest of the people in here, but when SB 5 passed and our state capitol was trashed by news people, I was very upset. Because I know if I went down there and did that, I'd probably be in jail. I want to know why people do that. Nobody gets prosecuted.
Well, I don't know if the state capitol was trashed or not. I think what happened in Wisconsin was pretty egregious. I think they did more than $1 million in property damage there. I don't think, for the most part, I don't think we really saw anything like that. Some rallies, I'll say, were more contentious than others. In general, police and fire were very good about this stuff. And I actually had a member of the Firemen's Union from Wayne County who would come in and see us every single day. He'd sit down, he'd talk to us for 10 minutes, and then he'd go out and do his thing. And we just disagree about the issue. But he was a great guy, but some of the organizations were less friendly, I'll say. And in fact, if you Google my name and the words Easy Street and SEIU, you can find some interesting stories about that, because they actually had spotters some places, and after the first vote, the SEIU came and accosted us at a restaurant, a little hole in the wall actually, a burger joint that the Senate President and the Pro Tem and 5 or 6 others of us went out just got a burger to unwind after what was, a really long, difficult day. And they found us, and they actually assaulted the owner of the restaurant. They weren't, and I think that the restaurant owner probably wisely decided it wasn't a big deal because he didn't want his business boycotted. By the same token, the head of the FOP found out about it, and he sent a text to some of the members and said that he was sorry to hear about that. And he didn't have anything to do with it, obviously. And so it varies widely by groups of people, but some are more contentious than others. But at the end of the day, I think Ohio we got sort of lucky. We didn't have a lot of the really sort of ugly problems that Wisconsin did.
Larry, I think you're modest, and I don't think people understand the level of courage it takes to do what you're doing. And I know full well of a threat that came to you personally that I'd ask you to share. And this is the kind of, it's unacceptable, but you have to tolerate this in order to serve us.
Yeah, well, I got a letter from, we had a lot of veiled threats and some more directly toward other people, but I and a lot of my colleagues got a letter from the obvious pseudonym Martha Washington, letting us know that we'd think long and hard about this and regret our decision when we were lying in the street, wishing we could call 911.
Oh my God.
But it's an isolated incident. At the end of the day, I don't make my decisions based on weird letters I get. And Frank LaRose and Keith Faber and the rest of us and Tom Meehouse don't either. We do what we have to do. And I did the right thing for the state. I still think it's the right thing. I'd do it again if I had the chance, because, like I said before, I choose to keep as many teachers in the classroom as possible and as many police on the streets as possible. And it's probably a good thing. Maybe I'll need them. I don't know. But it was the right policy, and we had a lot of people in Columbus this year who did what they thought was right, regardless of the consequences. And I think if you sat down with the governor and you asked him, look, your polls are in the 30s, this doesn't look so great for you 4 years from now, he'd say, so what? I didn't get elected just so I could run 4 years from now. I got elected to turn the state around, and that's what I've done. And that's why we have 79,000 new private sector jobs in the last 9 months. And that's why we see companies who are thinking about leaving staying here. And that's why we see companies now who are other places thinking about relocating here. And that's why we've got 79,000 families now that can put a roof over their head, parents who can feed their children, and get new clothes. And we see small businesses saying, you know, last year at this time I had 10 people and I really wanted to have 12, but I was scared to get money because I didn't know where the economy was going. Or I couldn't get money because the credit market was so bad no one would take a chance on me. Now I can hire 2 more people, maybe I can hire 4 more people. And I think that's important, and I think that's more important than whether I win another election or not. And I know the governor feels the same way. And we're going to continue doing what we think is right. And sometimes you'll agree with me. I think most of the time you probably will. Sometimes you might not. But at the end of the day, if I get elected again, great. And if John Casey gets elected again, that's good for the state. But if we don't, 15 years from now, we'll be able to look back and say, you know what, that first 6 months was the 6 months where we turned the state around, where we finally moved the state in the direction of free markets, where instead of hemorrhaging 100,000 jobs a year like we did under Ted Strickland, we started adding 70,000 jobs in a half a year. So, anyway, I think Jim is back here, so I think that's probably my cue to stop.
Appreciate your keeping us informed. Just a quick pulse here. The unions, etc., they didn't like the collective bargaining reform bill, so they put it on the ballot for referendum. Now they don't like voter fraud reform, so they're going to put that on the ballot. And unfortunately, we're going to have to survive with the old voter fraud right through the next presidential election because of that. What do you say?
Unless, as Larry said, they may be able to get certain aspects of that through before the 2012.
Right. Well, that's kind of the point. If they're going to referendum every piece of law, I think the only counterpoint I've heard is that they should continue past good laws. Let them referendum 10, 20. Essentially make the point to the public, you want to Californicate Ohio?
Right.
Yeah.
Make it a direct democracy where the least informed voter decides all decisions? Or are you going to want to maintain a republic where we have elected officials representing us, giving due diligence and consideration to those? So, I'd like to see a show of the hands for people that agree with the approach of put it on, enact it again. Every time they want a referendum on something, enact it again.
Right.
So if you're in favor of that approach, let me see your hands. I'd call that unanimous. Larry, take that message back. We think that's a great approach. All right. This national health care bill, it looks like Obama administration wants to fast track it to the Supreme Court. Larry, any thoughts about that? It's obviously
About what?
fast tracking Obamacare to the Supreme Court.
Oh yeah, the DOJ and the states actually both filed their cert petitions last week. So it's going to be, if the Supreme Court accepts it, and I have every expectation that they will, it'll be on their schedule in the spring. And they'll, if they hear arguments in the spring, they'll have a decision probably at the end of June.
Okay, and so if we pass the Health Care Freedom Amendment, it's not going to be rendered a moot point by a Supreme Court making a decision before that. But indeed, our passing the Health Care Freedom Amendment may influence the court in a positive direction. So
I think it'll work its way into the briefing, and if other states do the same thing, I think it's important. Drop a footnote in there somewhere that says this many states had bans in place last year. This many states did something like that even up to today. So yeah, I think it's important.
okay. Excellent. Okay, we have elapsed on our time. Unless there's one final announcement, anybody, going once, going twice?
I have one thing to say. Being a new guy, I was probably spoken too much today. But I just wanted to thank all of you. My last deployment, when I was in Afghanistan, I was getting emails from my mom, about everything was going on at McFan. And the McFan people are doing this, and the McFan people are doing that, and running and putting signs up and collecting signatures and everything. And I just want to let you all know that as somebody who is overseas away from my family and my wife and kids, I just had a tremendous amount of gratitude and appreciation to you all for doing what you're doing. It really felt to me, as someone who was away, that somebody was keeping home fires burning. And I just really appreciate what you all do through your activism to help protect our republic and our framing documents and our founding documents, the reverence that you put for our Declaration, our Constitution, and our flag. You all are patriots, and as a soldier that's sworn an oath to the Constitution, I thank you for your commitment and the reverence that you all place.
No, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I hope we
Jamie
can
says
send that
back
same
to my
message
boy.
to everybody that's serving us in uniform. We do have their backs and we love them. Thank you for coming. Have a great day.